Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about the unthinkable. We're going to talk about nuclear war. Sure, nuclear war is scary and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to talk about it and we're going to look at all sides. And who knows, maybe we'll even get a smile. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and we're going to talk about, of all things, nuclear war. And you know why? And let me tell you why we're going to talk about nuclear war. And I'm going to do about 15 or 20 minutes here, and I'm going to go over my Rockfin channel because, I do some premium stuff on my Rockfin channel. So hopefully maybe one or two people will come over and become a premium member. That certainly helps to keep the channel going. All right, nuclear war. So the bottom line is, I find it interesting. It's like, to me, when I see what's going on right now, the Biden administration, right? When I see the leaders of our country so like nonchalantly playing around with something that could wipe out mankind. I tell you what it reminds me of. My background when I was in law enforcement, I'll never forget. There's a place up in Harford County called the Rocks State Park. And at the Rock State in Maryland, Rock State Park, they've got these two big rocks. They call it King and Queen Seat. And you go there and there's these gigantic boulders, and the boulders are on the side of a cliff. And I mean a cliff. I don't mean a hill. I mean a cliff, right? And when I say cliff, I mean if you get over anywhere near, you don't have to be near, and you can look over. When you look over the side of the cliff and you look way, 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 way down at the bottom, you can see the tops of the trees. Way down at the bottom, you can see the tops of the trees, okay? Well, here's the bottom line. Here's what I'm getting at. So these friggin' idiots, they take me there. I was at that time in charge of that part area of the state, right? That was my half of the state that I was in charge of in law enforcement. So they're like showing me different areas, and they're like, okay, here's the king and queen seat, and I'm like, do we allow people? Shouldn't we have a sign or like a fence? We allow people to hop around on those rocks, and they're like, yep, and I'm like, but they're hopping around on the rocks. If they somehow like lose their footing, they're going over the side of that cliff. And they're like, yep, we have a few every summer. Go over the side of the cliff. And I'm like, oh, okay. All righty then. So me and the two guys I was with turn, and we start walking back up the path. We walk about 5 minutes up. Some guy runs up behind us. I'll never forget. He goes, officer. We're like, what? Somebody fell over the side. And I looked at what the guy with me. I'm like, yeah, now who didn't see that coming? So we walk back and we look over the side of the cliff. I'm going to tell you the story. What the hell? Look over the side of the cliff, and there's this poor schmuck laying way down there, right? And I could see him, but he didn't go to the part with the tops of the trees, like a ledge earlier where people were. He had flopped down to this one. Looked like he freaking dropped away his stuff. Trust me, he wasn't happy. So he's laying there, but I understand he's alive. And the bottom line is, I see some guy coming over the side, and when these ropes, people do all that kind of rock climbing and stuff. And the guy's like, I saw the whole thing, officer. I said, what happened? He slipped off the rock, and he was in the air, and then he bounced off one ledge, and then he was just flipping over and over in the air, and he hit into the tops of these trees over here, and that must have broke his fall, and he hit the ground. That's why he survived. I'm like, wow. He says, this is the first time I've ever been. My girlfriend took me rock climbing, and I figured I'd try it out. I said, what do you think? He's like, it ain't for me. I'm like, good choice, buddy. So that was my story. But what am I getting at with that? Why that long, boring, pain in the ass story? Because all I could think of is, why would you hop around on these rocks and take that kind of a chance? Do you see where I'm going? Okay. The United States government, first of all, this government's run by lunatics and idiots, but right now we're run by super lunatics and major idiots, right? And they're like, yes, we've had enough of fighting with guys on the back of Toyota trucks in Afghanistan and Syria. We lost all of those guys. So now we're going to go up against these superpowers who have nuclear weapons. We're going to go against superpower. Russia, a country that has more nuclear weapons than we do, that has superior missiles than we do, right? They got this missile now called the Sarmat 2. That it's a missile that fires all of these extra missiles out, and each of them has a nuke, and they all hit different areas, and they're all hypersonic, which means we don't have any kind of missile defense. So we're actually, and might I add, if you look into Ukraine, you can find that what did the United States do? The United States overthrew the government of Ukraine on Russia's border and put in a client state, a puppet government, and has been using the country on the border of Russia to harass the living shit out of Russia for the last 6 years. And it came to this. And now the US is like, we're going to continue to doing this. We've got CIA guys on the ground. We're pumping weapons into Ukraine, and we're going to really put it on Russia. But they got nukes. And that's not bad enough. That ain't bad enough. We're doing the same thing with China. We're like, yeah, we're going to. Recently, I was reading where the U.S. was building some bases outside of Guam because they were concerned that if the Chinese blew Guam to hell with missiles, then they need another base. Let me tell you something. Just a word to the wise, to the Navy. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your money. You don't have to build extra bases. You don't have to build anything, because if it gets to that, there's going to be a nuclear exchange and we're all going to die. So why bother? Just go enjoy your lives. Because if it gets to that. So the odds are, there's a reason that nobody has ever attacked another superpower or started a war with a nuclear power. You know why? Because we know how that ends. If you get a war between two nuclear powers, the loser is going to push the button. So we've got Biden, and this is why I don't understand Americans, dumbest people on earth. I'm telling you, I'm an American. We're the stupidest people on earth. Roe v. Wade. Now, something that you might not like, depending upon your ideology, might not be happy with. That may be something you want to protest about. But let's compare that with nuclear war and the end of all humanity, and tell me, of those two things, if you throw Roe v. Wade, nuclear war, all humanity ends, which one of those is probably more of an inconvenience in your life? And see, that's what I don't understand, people right now running around like, hey, I'm so upset over this Roe v. Wade. Well, you know, we're kind of on the verge of nuclear war. We'll all be destroyed. Get away from me with that stuff. That's not, what are you doing talking about the annihilation of humankind and extinction level event when we're trying to deal with the issue of Roe v. Wade? Good news, you won't have to worry about Roe v. Wade here if these idiots continue in the path they're on. Unbelievable. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about what it is. People talk about it. In the event that this happens, okay, so what happens? Missiles are flying, cities blow up, most everybody dies. Those who don't die in the initial blast, what happens? Well, there will be fallout all over the place that will kill most everybody else. So if you don't do that, then the wind blows all of the dust and all of the radiated stuff all over the place, and we all die of radiation poison. And those of us who don't, there'll be so much dust in the atmosphere, it'll close off. It's called nuclear winter, close off the sun, and then we all die. So the bottom line is we're all gone. We're all gone. Okay. But if you think about it, there is something to think about, you know. Let's think about from a Zen perspective. Let's go from a Zen perspective. From a Zen perspective, if in fact humankind is going to die from nuclear war, then kind of that's where we were headed. That was the ultimate where we were going to get into anyway. That's kind of like what this kind of creature creates, eventually does. You know, think about the dodo bird. The infamous dodo bird. We call people dodos. Why do we call a person a dodo? Because of the dodo bird. Okay. The dodo bird was a bird. And once sailors and stuff started going to these islands where there were dodo birds, what they found was the dodo bird had no natural enemies. They had no predators. So they didn't even have a concept of predators. So these guys who were sailors who wanted to eat dodo birds, you could walk right up to it. And they didn't have a concept of fighting or running away. They didn't need to. They had no natural predators. They just walked around and ate all the time. So people just grabbed them and wrung their little necks and cooked them and ate them. And at some point, there was no more dodo birds. Now, does that sound bad? Certainly. It is bad in an environment where there's somebody around to label it bad. But in reality, in a world where there are predators such as humans, and there are dodo birds that don't understand the concept of predators, What's going to happen is obvious. The dodo birds are going to be eaten, and the human predators are going to eat them. That's just the way things worked out. There's been animals in history that lived in a particular area and they overgrazed, shall we say, until there was nothing left to eat and they all died out. So in history, there have been creatures that have run into that particular thing where, for whatever reason, they've taken an action or there was an environmental change where it was no longer conducive to their existence and all of the creatures are gone. And that's happened with most every creature. And eventually, I mean, if we think about it, let's be honest, if we look at it from a perspective of science, what would we say? We'll say that at some point, in the trillion, I don't know how many billion years in the future, the sun will run out of helium, and it won't be able to turn helium into hydrogen, and it'll start to swell, and it'll take up the earth, and it'll blow, and it'll do super. So at some point, oh, Dan Kovalik is on Caleb Maupin's channel at 10. Love them both. So but at some point, the Earth's gone and we're gone anyway. So the reality is, the way the universe works, the only question about mankind getting out of here is when, not if. It's a when. Will it be sooner or will it be later? We don't know. But if there's nuclear war, then it'll sure be sooner. And it's amazing to me and interesting to watch how people can get upset over Roe v. Wade, get upset over various things because somebody didn't use the right pronoun or somebody said something about trans people or whatever the case may be, right? The old rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. There's a bunch of people on the Titanic heading for an iceberg. And then one guy's arguing. He's saying, what's wrong? Why are you mad? Well, because he served that guy before me. You're all about to hit an iceberg, and you're all going to be in the icy seas of the North Atlantic. But right now, you're upset because this person got better service than you did. Well, pretty soon it ain't going to matter for none of you all. And that's kind of the way I see it. I'm not saying that nuclear war is bound to happen. It may be, it may not. I got no control over that, so it's no use worrying about it. But I'm just saying, I find it interesting that people in this country do not, and in Europe, do not have the common sense, do not have the basic sense to understand the laws of probabilities and say, if we are harassing countries that have nuclear weapons, it is likely that this could come to, if things come to blows, it's likely that we could end humanity. There could be extinction level event. And we're on the edge. They're like, yes, the United States is in a proxy war with Russia. That's stupid. Russia doesn't want a proxy war with the United. And what is the U.S. saying? What are we saying? We're going to send even more people to the border. We're going to build more weapons on the border. We're going to do, why? Of Russia. Why are we doing more? And at the same time, we're doing the same damn thing to China. Why? Because maybe we won't get nuked with Russia. We got to make sure China nukes us. That's what kills me. But any event that it happens, let's talk about that. Let's talk about it. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, there is nuclear war. The only thing I'd like to be able to do if there was a nuclear war, I'd like to be able to sit around in a room with like the neocons, like a Jake Sullivan, for instance. There's a guy who I despise. What a smug, lunatic, idiot, sociopathic prick. Or better yet, no, I tell you who I want to hang out with. The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. These guys are so arrogant. They're so know-it-all. They're, I'd like to sit there with them. Oh no, it's on TV. The missiles are fired. Say, well, gentlemen, you're the elite ruling class. You went to the finest schools. You learned everything you were supposed to learn, and you have all great knowledge. And I'm just a poor little idiot. I didn't go to vine-covered universities like you. I didn't go to Harvard and Yale. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar or all those things that you guys are. But in a few minutes, we'll all be the same. Guess what? I was born black and you were born white. We'll all be black in a few minutes. We'll all be the same color. The one thing, the terrible, I'm saying yay for nuclear war, I'm just saying, but the thing about it would be is that's the great equalizer, isn't it? All the Bill Gateses of the world, the all of that. In that one moment, we're all equal. And you guys, you know what? We're all gone sooner or later. I mean, in honesty, who knows? Heart attack, cancer, whatever the hell, car accident. When you're born, it's just like a judge has sentenced you to death. Just like you've been sentenced to death. If you're born, you're out of here at one point or another. So at least I'd be able to look at these assholes and say, guys, you lived a good life, didn't you? You lived so well and you were so arrogant. And now look. And you know what? You may say, I'm sorry, or you may not, but it don't matter because right now you are going to finally get what you got coming to me. I'm out of here anyway. I was gone sooner or later. We all were, but I get to watch you. And you know what? I hope the missiles land far away because I don't want you to die in the first of a blast. I want some fallout to get on you, and I want you to suffer for weeks and weeks and weeks and throw up green stuff, and your hair and skin falls off. Your skin just falls off. Bloop. Yep, Tony Blinken. That's what I want to watch. That's the one good thing I can say, if anything about nuclear war. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Is that the neocons will get their comeuppance. They will be reduced to the reality. They will, what are they going to do? They're going to have a narrative. Hey, call the CIA. What are we going to do? The nukes are going to last in 8 minutes. We got to come up with a narrative and put it out on Twitter. And we're going to censor anybody who comes up. Make sure we're prepared to censor anyone on Twitter who goes against our narrative. And the narrative is going to be, it was Vladimir Putin that started it. Hey, but we started it. It doesn't matter who started it. We're going to say that Putin started it. Get on everybody. Call the New York Times. Call the Washington Post. Call them all. We got to get this thing going. We got to get this narrative going. And we only got 8 minutes to do it because we're all going to get wiped out in 8 minutes. Oh, shit. Wait a minute. Yep, that's it. That's how far their narratives will go. That's how far that bull crap to the New York Times and the Washington Post. All those narratives will be cleaned up by that. Now, let me say this too. Let me add this. Let me talk about something else. And this is something that people, and I'm going to go to Rockfin on this. This is something that a lot of people talk about, and it's important to have this discussion. Have a little fun with it. Okay, these billionaires, they could care less. You know why? And that's what you hear this. They could care less. Why? Because they have gigantic shelters and bunkers, and they're going to go live in this, blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And they're going to make, and we'll all be gone, and they'll be living in bunkers. And here's what I got to say. Okay, the nukes hit, and they call, or it goes that emergency. 20 minutes and the nuclear weapons and nuclear will be hit. Go head for a shelter, whatever, right? And then it'll dawn on these assholes. You know, I never thought about this as a billionaire, but I got 20 minutes to get to the shelter that I spent $10 billion building so I could live, or 50 billion, 100 billion. We've spent 100 billion building this shelter so that we could live in this shelter if there was a nuclear war. And I forgot that I only got 20 minutes to get there. And if I'm anywhere else in the world other than 20 minutes from that shelter, that I'm getting the same thing as everybody else, and I wasted all that money on the shelter. And the billionaires will be like, how far is you to the shelter? Dude, we're in Monaco. There ain't no shelter. Our shelter's in Northern Virginia. It'd take us a day to get back by the time everything happened. How much time do we got? 8 minutes. Well, what do you know? Now, a small sector of them would make it would make it. A small sector of them. Yeah. Whatchamacallit says that will not happen. They will that will not happen. They will all be in a safe bunker. That's what they're thinking. Yeah, we'll be in a safe bunker. Oh, yeah, but how many billionaires? Okay, you build a bunker. You got to be within 8 to 15 minutes of that bunker. What are the odds of that? What are the odds that even if you've got a series of bunkers around the world, what are the odds that you're going to be within 20 minutes of either one of them? If you're on the beach in Southern Cal, oh no, where's the nearest bunker? Oh, Idaho. It'll take us 4 hours. How much time we got? 6 minutes. See, the problem is they would suddenly realize, oh crap, we didn't think about this. But it's not like somebody sends you a telegraph the day before. We got something off the telegraph. What is it? Yes, we've got something from Vladimir Putin. It says tomorrow at 4 p.m. they're going to fire out the nukes. No, that's not the way it works. So there will be some of these clowns who will end up in the shelter, a few, and we're going to talk about what happens. And what I'm actually going to do, believe it or not, I'm going to jump over to Rockfin right now. We're going to talk about that. I appreciate everyone who's been on YouTube, BitChute, Twitter, etc. You can go to Rockfin for the rest of this. I do premium stuff on Rockfin. This is actual premium. Anybody can go to Rockfin and become a member. But in order to do premium, it's like $9.99 a month. And might I add, if you do premium on Rockfin, if you become a subscriber on Rockfin, which is $9.99 a month, you can watch anybody's premium stuff. And there's a lot of good stuff on Rockfin. So thanks a lot for everybody. I'm going to go over there. We're going to talk about what happens for those few schmucks that make it inside the bunker. Peace. And I'm off to rockfin.com. Oh, that's ROKFIN. And give me a second while I get everything.